That you're supporting Trump, who was found guilty of sexual assault by a jury in New York for the E. Jean Carroll case. And you were a rape victim yourself. And I guess his implication was that being so, that you should not support someone who is convicted of this crime.
Well,
there are not many people in this world, not many things in this world, more tone deaf than a guy who literally made his bones protecting President Bill Clinton from his who knows how many accusers and helping President Clinton's very, very dangerous wife work to convince the world that anything said about her husband was a right-wing conspiracy. I can always hear Hillary's voice when I say that. But anyway, that's who George Stephanopoulos really is. And, you know, it might be many, many decades ago, but this is who he is. And you'd think that this is a topic that any reasonable person with his history would avoid. But it's media and it's liberalism, not exactly a draw for reasonable people these days. But listen to what Bill Maher has to ask Nancy Mace about a topic that he would have been wise to avoid. Watch this, and then I'll tell you why I think the left just really cannot leave this alone.
Ask you about that because I asked before, would you mind talking about it, because you were much in the news last week about this issue because you were on George Stephanopoulos' show, and he was questioning about the idea that you're supporting Trump, who was found guilty of sexual assault by a jury in New York for the E. Jean Carroll case. And you were a rape victim yourself. And I guess his implication was that being so, that you should not support someone who is convicted of this crime.
Well, number one, to set the stage a little bit, I went on to talk about 2024. When the general election, it's Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. I had my 14-year-old kid with me, my daughter with me that day. It was work. I was there for work. She had no choice. She had to come with me. It was a really uncomfortable conversation afterwards with her on the way to the airport over this. And she knows my story. But number one, Donald Trump wasn't convicted of sexual assault. The 83 million was a defamation suit. It was about defamation. There was a sexual abuse claim, and she got a little bit for that. But the vast majority of it was for defamation, not rape, not sexual assault. So I think there are two types.
Is that right, Ron?
That is right.
Is that right? Bill Maher says. Bill Maher just had to ask if what he just told millions and millions of people, as if it was complete and total fact, if it was right. He had to ask if that's right. Just think about that for a second. Think about how many people are going to watch a guy like Bill Maher. Think about how many people are going to trust a guy like Bill Maher and believe what a guy like Bill Maher says. And they're going to take away what he says and they're going to use it to either inform or confirm their own goofy worldview, right? Probably millions and millions of people will be poisoned either directly or indirectly by people like Bill Maher, people like The View. And this is how it works. And these people haven't even spent the time to understand the actual facts, which only proves that facts do not matter to these people. What is real doesn't matter. What is factual doesn't matter. What is true, none of that matters. All that's important is that something they heard from one of their bubble-dwelling friends reaffirm their own confirmation bias that what they heard on MSNBC or wherever else about Donald Trump being a convicted violent criminal is true. Enough people repeat it, and they all believe it. Just ask yourself, if Bill Maher is that careless and that stupid, how many millions and millions of people have been victimized by this nonsense? And I promise you, man, there is no subject, no thing that these people are not willing to weaponize.
Endorsed Donald Trump for president. Judges and two separate juries have found him liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape. How do you square your endorsement of Donald Trump with the testimony we just saw?
Well, I will tell you, I was raped at the age of 16. And any rape victim will tell you, I've lived for 30 years with an incredible amount of shame over being raped. I didn't come forward because of that judgment and shame that I felt. And it's a shame that you will never feel, George. And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me about another potential rape victim. I'm not gonna do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald Trump.
No, you are shaming me.
You've endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. Donald Trump has been found liable for defaming the victim of that rape by a jury. It's been affirmed by a judge.
It was not a criminal court case, number one. Number two, I live with shame. And you're asking me a question about my political choices, trying to shame me as a rape victim, and I find it disgusting. And quite frankly, E. Jean Carroll's comments when she did get the judgment, joking about what she was going to buy, It doesn't, it makes it harder for women to come forward when they make a mockery out of rape, when they joke about it.
Doesn't it make it harder for women to come forward when they?
It makes it harder when other women joke about it, and she's joked about it. And I find it offensive. And I also find it offensive that you're trying to shame me with this question.
I'm not trying to shame you
at all.
In fact,
I have dealt with this for 30 years. You know how hard it was to tell my story 5 years ago when they were doing a fetal heartbeat bill and there were no exceptions for rape, incest, or rape or incest in there? I had to tell my story because no other woman was coming forward. No rape victims were represented. And you're trying to shame me this morning.
I'm just asking.
And I find it offensive, and this is why women won't come forward.
You know, the problem, I think, for the rest of us, you know, the average guest to these very, very average propagandists is not someone of the caliber of Nancy Mace. You know, most of these people can't fight back at least as eloquently as Nancy Mace did. They can't fight back at all, right? Most of them just get caught up in the scam and end up being an unwilling accomplice to the propaganda. But she's smart, you know, and she makes very, very clear this is not and was not a criminal conviction. This was a civil case that required a special expiring state law for it to even happen. You know, what this was a masterful, coordinated attack by political actors, and it was nothing more than that. Mace knows this. You and I know this. And worst of all, George Stephanopoulos, he knows this. But truth and facts, they do not matter to these people. And I think this behavior proves that nothing matters to these people. They will weaponize a rape victim's experience against her because she's a Republican and she supports Donald Trump. If there was any classic ACLU type liberals that still existed, they would be speaking up right now, but they're not. You know, this is where we are in the year 2024. Terror organizations use sexual violence as a weapon, and liberal media uses it as a tool of propaganda. All the while, modern day Democrats, they support and they condone really both of those things. And if they didn't, you know, they shouldn't be so silent, but they keep remaining silent. But that's just my take, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already, be a part of our growth. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. I'll see you in the next one.